Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make hot cross buns because Easter is approaching. I think it's early April sometime. So, and hot cross buns have been in the shops for weeks and weeks now already, but they're never as good as homemade ones, I don't think. But anyway, they are very good and they come in varieties of flavours these days. And although I've done hot cross buns in the past, I think 2016 was when I did my video of hot cross buns, and I've done variations, a loaf and such like. I'm going to do them again today, but slightly adjusting the flavours. So I'm going to infuse my milk with some cardamom, some cloves, some saffron, and a cinnamon stick. And that's going to give extra flavour and more complex flavours in the dough itself. And then I'm also going to use some allspice and some ground ginger. So I'll go on to the ingredients, and for this I have 500 grams, which is 3 cups plus 1/3 of a cup of strong white bread flour. That's based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup. I have 300 millilitres, 1 1/4 cups of milk. And then, as I mentioned, I have 3 cardamom pods, which I have bashed with a hammer just to crack them and bruise them. I have 2 cloves, a pinch of saffron, and 1 cinnamon stick, and they're going to go in with the milk. I have 42 grams of unsalted butter, that's 3 tablespoons, and I will melt that ready for when I need it. I have 75 grams, 6 tablespoons of caster sugar, 150 grams, which is about 1 cup of currants, and 50 grams, which is about 5 tablespoons of chopped mixed peel. 1 medium egg, that would be large in the USA, 10 grams, which is 3 teaspoons of instant yeast, 6 grams, 2 teaspoons of allspice, 1 1/2 grams, half a teaspoon of ground ginger, 6 grams, 1 teaspoon of salt, and the zest from 1 lemon. And then I also have here 75 grams, about half a cup of bread flour, and I'm going to mix that later with some water to make the crosses on the top of the hot cross buns before we bake them. And I will also use a little bit of golden syrup, which I will warm through, and I'll brush that on the top after they've baked, just to give them that shiny but sticky appearance that hot cross buns have. So the first thing to do is to prepare our milk infusion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the milk into a saucepan, and then I'm simply going to add in the cinnamon, the cardamom pods, the cloves and the saffron, and I'm going to put those onto the stove, and I'm going to bring that mixture to a boil. And as soon as it starts boiling, I'm going to turn off the heat and leave it for 1 hour. That will allow those flavours to infuse into the milk. And after an hour, I'm going to strain off the cardamom, cinnamon and such like, and reheat the milk until it is 42 degrees Celsius or thereabouts, 108 Fahrenheit. Between 37 and 42 is good. That's sort of a lukewarm temperature ready for making our dough. And at that stage, I'll also have melted my butter. So I'll come back once my milk has boiled, cooled down and been strained. So it's been an hour, and I heated my milk till it was boiling. I left it to cool down with those ingredients in it, and I've strained those off and reheated it to about 42 degrees Celsius. So now I have my milk here in a jug, and I have my butter, which I have now melted, and that's cooling down, and I've beaten the egg. So now we're ready to start to make the dough for our hot cross buns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my flour into the bowl of the stand mixer. I'm going to add into that my yeast. So I'll add into the flour the yeast, and I'm going to add in the mixed spice and the ground ginger, and I'll just give those a little bit of a stir around. Like that. And then I'll sprinkle the sugar over. Stir it again. And then the salt. And onto that I'm going to pour my beaten egg and the melted butter, and about half of the milk, not being prescriptive, and I'm going to start to knead that on a low speed until it begins to come together, adding more milk until the whole thing comes together. I may not need all of the milk, but I want it to be a nice shaggy dough to start with. I should say, before I go too far, that I forgot to add in the zest, so I'm going to put the zest in now and get that mixed in as it needs. And that's almost into a shaggy dough, and I've still got at least 2 tablespoons of my milk left, which I may not need. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the speed now and knead this until it comes together into a soft and supple dough, and it's quite stretchy. And if I need to add more milk, I will. If not, I won't. And that dough now looks actually quite good. It's nice and stretchy, as you can see, and it's actually quite smooth. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to now add in my currants and my chopped mixed peel, and I'm going to just knead that on a low speed until they're fully incorporated throughout the dough. So that's reasonably well mixed in, and I'm going to tip that out onto a lightly floured work surface. So I've tipped my dough out, and I'm just going to flatten that out and fold it up, and the reason for that is that where I have little clumps of fruit, I want to just help to get that distributed through. And that's good like that. So I'm going to form it into a ball, and I'm going to squeeze the underside together like that, And then I'm going to put that into a greased bowl. And I put it in top side down and then turn it over. And I'm going to cover that, and you can cover it with plastic wrap, but I have a lid for my bowl. And I'm going to put that into a warm place and allow it to proof until it has at least doubled in size. And that's going to take maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half. But once it's doubled in size, I'll come back and we'll go on to the next step, which is to divide it into 12 pieces and shape our buns. So I've proofed my dough until it's more than doubled in size, and I'm going to tip that out onto a floured surface like that. And I'm just going to knock the air out of it a little bit. And I want to divide that into 12 equal sized pieces. So I'm actually going to weigh mine. I'm just going to pop it back in the bowl to weigh it. And I need pieces which are about 94.5, 95 grams each. So I will divide that into those pieces. So I have my 12 pieces, and I'm going to flatten them and then form them into a ball. Like that, turning them over and squeeze them together, and I'm going to put them onto a baking tray, but I'm going to leave a gap between each of them. And then as they proof, that gap will close and they will just join up a little bit. So there I have the 12, and as you can see I've left a gap, and that gap will gradually close up as they rise up. So I'm going to cover them with a clean towel, and I'm going to leave them to rise until they've just about doubled in size. And as that time comes to an end, I'm going to preheat my oven to 220 degrees Celsius. That's 200 Celsius with a fan, 430 Fahrenheit, and then I'll be ready to bake them. But before I do that, I'll come back and we'll make our paste to make the crosses on the top, and then we'll bake them. So while my buns are rising before they go into the oven for baking, I have my flour here, 75 grams, and 100 millilitres of water, which is half a cup minus 4 teaspoons. And I'm going to add most of that into the flour, and I'm going to stir it around. I want to create a paste which I can then either spoon into a cross shape or pipe over the buns into a cross shape on the top. So I'll just stir that around until it's a nice smooth paste. And I'm going to leave that just to sit, and the flour will absorb more of the water. It might thicken up a little bit, but before I pipe it, I can also add a little drop more water if I want to loosen it up a little bit, or I can add a little drop more flour if I think it's too loose. So I'll set that to one side, and we'll wait for our buns to rise fully. So my buns have rested like that, and I've put my paste into a piping bag, and I'm just going to snip a little tip off the end, and then I'm going to pipe a line of the paste over each of the buns in one direction, and then pipe another line in the other direction like that, and then I'm going to put those into the oven and I'm going to bake them for between 20 and 25 minutes until they rise up and go a nice sort of golden brown colour on the top. Then I'll take them out of the oven, and at that stage I will have preheated, or sorry, I would have heated up just a couple of tablespoons, maybe 40 grams of golden syrup, so that it's soft and malleable, and I can brush it over the top of the buns while they're still warm. So I'll come back when the hot cross buns have baked and they're ready to have the golden syrup put on the top. I baked the hot cross buns for 20 minutes and I tested the internal temperature, and it was up to 98 degrees, and in a couple of them it was 100 degrees Celsius. So that's well hot enough for them to be cooked all the way through. So I took them out of the oven, and this is what they look like. And I've heated my golden syrup, so straight away I'm going to just brush the top of each one with some golden syrup, just like that. So they're brushed, and I'm going to leave those to cool down, and once they've cooled down I'll come back and I'll have a taste of one. The hot cross buns are almost completely cooled now, and so I've cut one in half, and I put some butter on one half, so I'll have a taste of that. Lovely and fruity, and I get the allspice. There's a slight hit of ginger, and I think the flavour complexity is slightly different from the original ones which I made 6 or 7 years ago, because we've infused the milk, but very, very good indeed. And these will be perfect served on Good Friday morning, which is traditionally when hot cross buns are eaten, but of course these days they're available in the shops for weeks and months before Easter, so they can be enjoyed at any time. My personal preference is to cut them in half and toast them and then butter them and eat them like that. I should say you can add different fruits in if you want to. You can add some chocolate chips in if you want to. I've seen lots of different combinations of hot cross buns, but this basic recipe works very well. I also ought to say that instead of using the golden syrup which I used, you could make a quick sugar syrup, sort of a tablespoon or two of sugar with a little drop of water, melt it until the sugar heat it until the sugar dissolves, and brush that over the top. That will work very well as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for this recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well. I'll also put a link below for the original hot cross bun recipe as well if you want that, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.